Today on Variant, we're checking out the history of Rocket Raccoon and Groot. Welcome to Variant, where we love comics more than I think everyone needs to watch the Ruby anime. It's really good. I'm your host, Arris. As most of you know, last week I partnered with Comicave Studios to attend the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 premiere at the Dolby Theater in Hollywood, and I shared my spoiler-free review of the movie on Monday. If you haven't had a chance to watch the review yet, you can check it out here. In short, it was amazing, and I cannot wait for you guys to see it so we could share all of its fantasticness. But in the meantime, I'll be setting you guys up with a couple of Guardian-themed episodes leading up to the movie's release on May 5th. And since I already did an Origin of Drax episode, let's keep moving down the list with a 2-for-1 History of episode of Rocket Raccoon and Groot. Both of these characters have pretty thin histories before they were brought together as members of the Guardians of the Galaxy, so I'm going to give you a brief origin for both Rocket and Groot before getting into their time as a duo. And since we have to start somewhere, let's kick it off with Rocket Raccoon. Rocket is a genetically manipulated raccoon with a big mouth from planet Halfworld. He was created by writer Bill Mantlo with artist Keith Giffen and first appeared in a black and white comic called Marvel Preview Issue 7 in 1976. The issue was a small and much overlooked storyline called The Sword in the Star, where he was initially introduced as Rocky Raccoon. Believe it or not, creator Bill Mantlo drew his inspiration of Rocky's character from a weird 1968 Beatles song called Rocky Raccoon. So go ahead and drop that in your trivia bucket of knowledge. Rocky is one of the many characters created during America's space race era of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where a slew of sci-fi based characters and stories were introduced in what would eventually be called Marvel's cosmic universe. Honestly, things got kinda weird in comics for a while during that time, although we did get a few great characters out of it. Anyway, Rocky Raccoon doesn't make his next appearance until The Incredible Hulk issue 271 in 1982, where we first learned that Rocky is actually short for Rocket. In this one-issue appearance, we're introduced to Rocket Raccoon as the gunslinging guardian of Halfworld and the entire star system known as the Keystone Quadrant, all of which is protected behind the barrier called the Galatian Wall. He's also the captain of the starship Rack and Ruin, with his first mate, Walrus, because he's a talking walrus. Get it? I told you stuff got weird. This issue gives us a couple of clues about Rocket and Halfworld's origin as well, but we really have to jump to 1985 where Rocket is reintroduced in his very own 4-part miniseries to get the full story. In the miniseries story known as the Toy Wars, we learn that Rocket Raccoon, along with many other animals, had been genetically enhanced by an ancient, highly advanced race of people in order to be the caretakers for the mentally ill members of their species known as the Loonies. All of whom were kept on an abandoned colony planet known as Halfworld, almost like a giant galactic asylum. The planet earned the name Halfworld as its society was divided between the robot's industrial half and the other half occupied by the Loonies and their animal caretakers. However, because the genetic manipulation of the animals dramatically increased their intelligence, allowing them to walk and talk like any human, the animals began to create their own advanced society over time, separate from the Loonies. As the planet's chief defender, Rocket was known as Ranger Rocket, and mainly dealt with the problems created by a trade war between the heads of two rival toy companies. A sinister mole named Judson Jakes with his robot killer clowns and rabbit assassins, and a strange iguana named Lord Divine who dresses like a gypsy. I know you really want to believe I'm making this up, but nope. After that, Rocket went on to make a couple brief cameos in other books, but altogether he only appeared in roughly 10 comic book issues in his first 30 years of existence. Which leads us to the 2007 Star-Lord miniseries Annihilation Conquest, where Rocket Raccoon is recruited by Peter Quill to first become a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy. It's at this point that Rocket met and bonded with another new member of the Guardians, and that would be our next character, Groot, the giant tree monarch of Planet X. But first, it's time to show our sponsor some love. When you buy a domain name from domain.com, you get the power to influence and control what people find when they search for you online. No domain extension will help you tell your story like a .com or .net domain name. Domain.com is affordable, reliable, and easy to use. The guys at domain.com gave Variant an awesome offer. Get 15% off domain.com's already affordable domain names and web hosting when you use the coupon code Variant at checkout. So when you think domain names, think domain.com. Getting back to our giant wooden friend, Groot was created by writers Larry Lieber and Stan Lee, with artists Jack Kirby and Dick Ayers. The character made his first appearance in Tales to Astonish issue 13 in 1960, but contrary to what some may think, he didn't start out as the lovable hero we all know from the recent comic book version. In his first appearance, Groot was introduced as a villainous monster from Planet X who sought to turn humans into slaves. He also had a much bigger vocabulary. You heard me correctly, the original version of Groot spoke in full sentences. In the story, he was ultimately stopped from taking over Earth by a scientist who used termites against him. Makes sense to me. Groot didn't make another appearance until 1976, where he appeared in the Incredible Hulk Annual Issue 5, once again as an angry tree seeking to destroy the Hulk and enslave humanity. And while he initially gave Hulk some grief, the Hulk eventually got mad enough that he beat Groot into a tiny little stump. Literally. The character only made one or two more brief cameos after that, until he was completely reimagined and reintroduced as one of the new members of Guardians of the Galaxy, in the same 4-part miniseries Annihilation Conquest, where Rocket Raccoon also became a member. Since then, we've actually been given a few different versions of Groot's origin. However, in both the two main versions, he's a noble member of the alien species from Planet X known as Floral Colossus, who was exiled from his people after defying the behaviors of his race. The behaviors and reasons are different between the two origins, but the main points are the same. After being exiled, Groot roamed the galaxy until eventually meeting Star-Lord, becoming a member of the Guardians. Which leads us to Rocket and Groot as a duo. There is several different versions of how their partnership started, but in Annihilation Conquest, Rocket and Groot bonded almost immediately during their initial training. They realized what a great team they made right off the bat, with Groot being a massive force of nature and Rocket being a small and agile sharpshooter. Not to mention, Rocket is one of the few beings capable of understanding Groot's language, which is mainly made up of 3 words: I, am, and Groot. But don't take my word for it, Rocket said it best.
You don't know talking good like me and you. So his vocabularistics is limited to I and am and Groot. Exclusively in that order.
This new duo has since gone on to play a major role in Marvel Comics with the Guardians of the Galaxy and more recently their own solo titles. And the same goes for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, with the first Guardians movie in 2014, as well as this year's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. They've also made appearances in TV shows such as the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, Ultimate Spider-Man, Avengers Assemble, and the Guardians of the Galaxy cartoon. Not to mention video games like Marvel Heroes and Avengers Alliance. But let's dive into some powers and abilities, starting with Groot. Being a kind of tree king, Groot can control trees and even form plants, using them as means of attack when necessary. He also has the ability to grow and extend his own limbs, which he can use for attacking enemies or as a shield to protect others. As his size might suggest, Groot possesses super strength and can cause massive damage, even displaying partial invulnerability. But he also has a genius level intellect, which might be shocking to some of you, as he only ever says, I am Groot. He also has the ability to escape death by regenerating himself, as long as there's even a small cutting of himself left, which is what gave us Baby Groot in the upcoming movie. And sweet baby Buddha is he funny. Next up is Rocket, who is one of Marvel's best marksmen and pilots. In addition to piloting spacecraft, he wears rocket skates that allow him to fly short distances. As a weapons and demolition expert, Rocket always carries his dual laser pistols, but he has a serious love affair with his heavy artillery. Rocket is also a master tactician and is seriously skilled in combat due to his speed and intelligence. Other than that, Rocket possesses all the attributes of a normal raccoon, so he's got a heightened sense of smell, sight, and hearing, as well as strong agility, sharp claws, and a serious tree climbing ability, which is one of the things that makes him and Groot such a deadly combo. To sum things up, most people are surprised to learn that most of Rocket and Groot's history is fairly new in comics, but with the popularity of their roles in the MCU, I'd say they're going to be around for a very long time. As for reading recommendations, be sure to check out the 1985 Rocket Raccoon Tales from Half-World miniseries, The Incredible Hulk issue 271, Tales to Astonish 13, Incredible Hulk Annual 5, The Annihilation Conquest, and finally start reading the current Guardians of the Galaxy title by Brian Michael Bendis, issues 1 through 18. First up for Wednesday, April 26th, we have Ben Reilly's Scarlet Spider issue 1. The blue hoodie wearing Ben Reilly has returned, and the controversy has only begun. And I gotta say, I still love the blue hoodie costume for some reason. Here we have Rocket Raccoon issue 5. Since today was partially a Rocket Raccoon episode, of course I had to put his title on the buy list. And finally we have Weapon X issue 2. With Weapon X's killer cyborgs now able to hide in plain sight, Old Man Logan and Sabretooth have formed an uneasy alliance to find the revived Weapon X program and stomp it out before it gets any stronger. And that brings another episode of Variant to a close, but if you like our channel, be sure to subscribe and then hit the little bell next to it so you're notified whenever we upload a new video. But as always, you can like our Variant Facebook page to keep up with the show and all things comic related. You could also follow Variant on Twitter at Variant Comics or this face on Twitter at Arris_Quinones. But I'll see you guys next week when I talk about all things comics. With Groot being a massive force nation. I am Groot. I am Groot. I am Groot. I am Groot.